Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I commend you for coming on this beautiful evening where you could be sitting outside having a barbecue or something. I mean, we can really possibly say summer has arrived. That is in New England, where I come from, which is South Africa. And how did I ever end up here? We have weather like this 8 months of the year. So you can imagine that in the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 months of winter here, it is rather difficult for me. So as I mentioned, I come from South Africa, and I thought I'd just tell you a little story just to get us going. I was born in Johannesburg, and this was many years ago, as probably you can tell. And my parents were very excited as they built their own house way out in what later became suburbs, but was in the Johannesburg was much smaller than it is now. It's a big booming city. I don't know how many of you have been to Johannesburg, but in those days, within I don't know, 10 minutes, you were in the country. I assume it was like that here many years ago too. So my parents built this beautiful house out in the country, and we had sprawling lawns, and it was quite wild there. You know, you didn't exactly see lions and tigers, but you know, there was a fair amount of wildlife. And in this lovely house that I loved so much, I used to play, and there was a swing, and there was a sandpit, and I had a glorious time. And much to my dismay, at age 4, my parents thought, well, you know, you can't just sit around in your sandpit and you swing every day. You'd better go to kindergarten. Now, this was a horrendous experience for me. What a stupid idea. I mean, why would anybody want to sit inside all day learning to say 2 times 2 is 4? But anyway, that's another story. The story I just wanted to tell you is that my father took my education very seriously. And my first gift was a large Reader's Digest atlas. Now, I don't know if any of you ever got those old versions of the large Reader's Digest atlas. And at age 4, the atlas standing on the floor was almost taller than myself. And in the evenings, my father would say, "Annabel, bring the atlas." And so I would go and I would sit on his knee, and he would read the names of clouds, the names of comets, the names of all kinds of things that was horrendously boring in this incredible language of cumulus and cirrus and all this kind of thing. But I sat on his lap, and it was a very endearing time. And then there was always the struggle to go to bed. And in Africa, as I say, I don't know how many of you have been there, Africa has very dark nights. It can be really dark. And our house, of course, being far away from the city, there weren't many bright lights, so it really was dark. And this little girl, Annabel, used to be frightened to go to bed because of the darkness. And so we had mosquitoes, and my parents had put up a mosquito net, and I would pull the mosquito net tightly around the bed so that I would be safe from the darkness. And therein lies many, many tales. And where it ties in, I think, with our discussion, our reflection, our sharing this evening, is that as we grow, we experience all kinds of darkness. And what I realized as a young child growing up is that I was afraid of this darkness, and I would ask myself, why? And I came to realize that it is because in the darkness, one can't see. And therefore, what we can't see, we can't understand. And what we can't understand makes us afraid. And I think as we grow older in life, one of our big challenges is how to come to terms with the darkness and to realize there is so much in that darkness that is so much part of life. So that's just a little vignette I wanted to tell you about my own growth in self-understanding. So this evening, I had sort of 5 ideas that I wanted to share with you under living your unlived life, if not now, when? And the first idea that I wanted to talk about was the search for meaning. And so often we talk about that what people want in life is to be happy. And I think I prefer to look at it that what we really want in life is meaning. That there is a deep existential desire for meaning. We need meaning and we need purpose. And life is often highly incomprehensible. Discrepancy between the life we long for and the life we live. And we are thrown all kinds of surprises, some good, or what we term good, and some what we term not so good. And in my experience, I don't know of anyone who gets what I call a clean deck of cards. There is always something in the cards that carries some suffering, some loss, some pain. So life has this incomprehensibility to it. It is a mystery, really. It's actually a mystery how well we navigate through it. And for us, this mystery is for us to engage in and to never give up engaging in, to engage, to grasp, and like Jacob with the angel's heel, to wrestle tenaciously without giving up. Because it is so easy, given some, to fall into passivity, to become overburdened, to fall into a place of victim. And so we keep needing to inspire ourselves to keep up that engagement and that wrestling and that finding of purpose. Now let's talk some more about where do we find purpose and meaning. And I would suggest we find purpose and meaning in the swamplands of our life. It's in the dark, in the dirt, in the muck, in the place that we don't want to go, in the hurt, in the pain, in the sorrow, in the confusion, in our fear, in our guilt. In those swamplands, we find incredible purpose and meaning. And if you think about it, in this world, where do we find precious stones? The more precious they are, the more beautiful they are, the more deeply they are buried. Gold, which is something, of course, South Africa has a lot of, but people have to risk their lives to go into the depth of the mine to find that gold, or risk their lives to go into the depth of the mine to find those diamonds. And that is our reflection too. We need to go into our own depths. We need to mine our own depths, because therein we will find that gold, our own precious minerals. And so that takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of courage. Now, what I would like to add is that I think all of us, we have deep longing. That's another existential fact about the human condition. We all have deep longing. And we spend, particularly our younger lives, trying to fulfill that longing, or trying to close it up, or get it to disappear, or satisfy it. And so we have a longing and we get an education, and we have a longing and we get married, and we have a longing and we have children, and then we have a house, and then we go on cruises, and we keep finding ways that we think we can satisfy that deep, deep longing. And of course, everything that we stuff our longing with never lasts, right? It is always transient. Even the children, even our children, they grow up, they go and live in Australia, they find their new lives, and that deep longing always resurfaces. And so, in our reflection about meaning, I would like to invite us to begin having a dialogue with our longing. Not to get rid of it, but to learn about it, to spend time with it, to drop into it, to drop into the darkness, to drop into the ambiguity or the loss, and just get to know our longing. Because I think once we get to know our longing, we will get some strange gift of a grasp of the impenetrable mystery of life. And I think it's in that longing, staying with that longing, that we will find some amazing secrets and some amazing gifts and some amazing insights. And so, reflection 1 about the search for meaning is, I'm suggesting at this time, if not now, when? Let us, rather than try to satisfy everything, just live in the depths of that existential call. And that meaning and that longing will find a voice that we've never had time or given the space to hear. So that's my first reflection. My second reflection is about our personal stories. We all have personal stories, right? In fact, who are we but our stories? We are the embodied narrative of these continuous stories. Every moment is a story. Every journey is a story. Our lives are stories. In fact, there's a story that God made humans because God likes stories. So we are a storied existence. And the narrative of our lives are tremendously important. And so in my second reflection, in talking to you about your personal story, what I am going to suggest is that you spend some time reflecting on your story. What is your story? What stories do you tell yourself? What do you stress? What do you remember as the framework of your life, as your embodied stories? What do you emphasize? What do you forget? What do you hold as precious? What do you hold, or what part of the story holds the pain? What is the tapestry of your story? And to think about that, and I just, a personal comment here, is my parents fled Nazi Germany. They were Holocaust survivors. They lost everything, their families, everything. And they fled and arrived in South Africa in, oh gosh, it was late, the 1930s, 1939 perhaps. They kind of left it a little bit tight there. But they made it out. And here they landed in South Africa with a little bag around their neck with a few, I don't know, dollars maybe, I guess. They couldn't speak English very well, and they had to create a whole new life. And my mother couldn't have children, so I would hardly say I'm an immaculate conception, so let's not. But I was very fortunate. I was a little baby in a home. I had been abandoned, and my parents, my mother, who couldn't have children, one of the things that was life-giving for her was to work in adoption homes. And of course, she found beautiful me. And how could she say no, right? So, stories. And my parents, they had to create a whole new living and a whole new self-understanding. And South Africa wasn't particularly the only reason why they encouraged people to come, sadly, was because they were white. But even so, immigrants were very much disenfranchised. They were not, they were to stay in this little area in Johannesburg and, behave properly and all that kind of thing. But without going into the depth of all of those stories, I just always marveled at my parents' ability to somehow live through that experience, even though night after night they used to they were glued to the wireless. We called it a wireless in those days. Do many of you know what a wireless is? Maybe some of you, yeah? Okay. And they were trying to hear about their family, had anybody survived or something. And that was the environment in which I grew up. So that's also part of my story. And I was terribly fortunate, as I mentioned, in that my parents were very, they just got on with it. They said, this is life, we have to get on with it. Certainly they had to deal with the loss, and that did certainly come out in various ways. But stories, how do we grapple with stories? One of the ways that I have found helpful is in writing my own story, or writing pieces of my story. And I encourage you to do the same. It's enormously cathartic. It also helps us to have a look at what are the stories we hold on to. Is there a way we could give it another spin? Was it really that bad? Was it really that good? Why did we leave some part of that out? What part of our story possesses us and claims us, even now, so that we can't feel free of it, to live these next precious years of our lives? So here the invitation is to think about your story, maybe to see how does your story resonate with a myth. Were you, I don't know, Attila the Hun? It could be some wonderful myth that somehow resonates with you and helps give you meaning. Now, I like to talk about this fellow called Sisyphus. You all know who Sisyphus is, or you've heard of him, I'm sure. Sisyphus, well, if you don't mind, just a few words of background. Sisyphus is supposedly the founder of Corinth. Now, you all know Corinth because you know Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, right? He was supposedly the founder of Corinth, and he was sort of a king of the city-states in Greece in those times, long time ago. Now, bear in mind, this is maybe a myth, maybe it's true. Anyhow, he was an absolute trickster, Sisyphus, and he was always playing tricks on people. And one day, Pluto came up from Hades and said, "Hello, Sisyphus, it's time for you to go downstairs." In other words, kick the bucket. I mean, that's very colloquial, but basically that's what he was told. Your time to say goodbye to life. And Sisyphus said, "Really? I'm not ready." And Pluto said, "Well, and I have a brand new gadget." So technology was already beginning in those days. "I have a brand new gadget to take you down to Hades. And these are a pair of cuffs, handcuffs." Sisyphus, said, "Really?" He said, "Can you show me how they work?" So of course the devil cuffed himself, and Sisyphus said, locked him in a cupboard, and off he went, and he lived a few more years. Now, of course, there was havoc on Earth because Pluto was locked up in the cupboard, so people were dying and then showing up for dinner the next day. However, on with the story. Sisyphus, eventually, the gods said, "We've had enough of you, you trickster." And eventually, they got him. And how did they get him? They said, "You're going to pay for all these tricks. And that is, you're going to labor every day," you know the story, pushing the stone up the hill, the boulder up the hill, and no soon as the boulder got up the hill, then kaboom, 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 it comes down again. And for the rest of eternity, Sisyphus is pushing that boulder up the hill. And as soon as he's got to the top, down it comes again. Now, can you think of anything more meaningless? Anything more, awful than being destined to this existence? And some of you might have read Albert Camus, the writer, or seen the drawing by, I think it is Rembrandt, of Sisyphus. And as he's bending down and taking the rock for once again to push it up the hill, he has a smile on his face. So Sisyphus, what we call amor fati, the love of one's fate. In looking at our stories, can we look and appreciate and reflect on the love of our destiny, where we are now, and what we're going to make of it going forward? If not now, when? So the third reflection I would like to bring up is something that I think many people are talking about, but maybe not grasping the depth of what this means, and what this is. Mindfulness. How might we, in these sort of later chapters in our lives, be more present? How might we every day wake up and be present? Be here. Be mindful. Now, many people are doing yoga. I imagine some of you are doing yoga. And many people are talking about meditation. And people are talking about mindfulness. And I thought it might be worthwhile just briefly just to talk about the incredible power of mindfulness and living life intentionally. Making every moment an intention to do what? To pay attention. If we could, instead of running around, grasping at different things, trying to get more things done, if we could just focus on being mindful, if we could focus on being in the present moment with intention, non-judgmentally, and open to whatever is. And maybe cut back on the expectations, the attachments, the hopes, the desires, the aversions that we all have, and stay in the moment and treasure each moment. If we could only know how powerful our attention is, the psychic power of our attention is phenomenal. We can achieve so much by paying attention. Attention heals. Attention gives compassion. Attention opens up for gratitude. Attention allows for forgiveness. Attention is an opening. It is an allowing for possibilities. It is channeling, it is attuning, it's aligning everything that is our deepest selves, our consciousness, the greatest gift of life to us humans, and channeling it in a constructive and positive way. And that is the amazing power of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the intention to pay attention here and now and just be present to what is in the here and now. And like the stream of life, just watch as things pass and find a new calmness, a new equanimity, a way to disidentify from all the noise, all the misunderstandings, the miscommunications, what she said about me, what he did to me, what life threw at me, and just to be present to the moment. And to know, we all know, everything passes. Here I am, I'm standing in front of you. I've lived more than 60 years. I've lived on 3 continents. I've experienced many things, as have you. We've experienced birth, death, love, hate, despair, sorrow, betrayal. We've experienced it all. And it's touched us all. And it's affected us all. And yet we're here. We're here. We have survived through our courage. Because through our own hero's journey, we have plowed through. And so mindfulness allows us to take that step back and get a new perspective. It enables us to use our minds, our psyche, our spirit intentionally. Now, the incredible benefit of mindfulness, which is practice, one way to practice mindfulness, just like before you go on a jog or you're going to play tennis or something, you need to practice a little bit, is meditation, is the enormous, personally healing impact of meditation. The impact on our health and well-being, as the neuroscientists are now pointing out, is quite phenomenal. So if people are saying, well, you know, what's really in it for me, or this is too difficult, or whatever, that would be a pity, because just 8 or 10 minutes a day of meditation can not only change your whole nervous system, your glandular system slowing down, but actually helps rewire your brain and open up your brain to slowing down, giving your brain a better chance at being more thoughtful, more clear. The gap between stimulus and response is now expanded, so we're less reactive. All those many things come from being mindful. But not only that, once we're mindful, we're present to our own lives in a very different way. Because now we really hold up each moment in its preciousness. David White, the poet, some of you might know him, he's written a lot. He has a wonderful poem where he talks about something like, at one time I was 26 and I turned my head and I was 60. I can speak to that easily. Time just goes. We all say, you know, can you believe it's already the end of May? Because where were we on the 1st of January, the 2nd of January, the 3rd of January? Where were we? So if I could just invite you to think about setting the intention every morning, or maybe in every encounter, every time I meet with you, talk with you, email to you, engage with you in the corridor, say, hi, how are you? And then rush off to do my shopping. Maybe we could slow down a little bit and really be present. And be present to ourselves, be present to our own feeling. And that will take care of us in a very new and different way. So that's my third reflection and invitation to you, which is, if not now, when? So my fourth reflection is, here we are, sort of in the later part of our lives, many of us, and we all have an unlived part of our lives. Has to be, you know. We can't live all possibilities. Now, the accident of birth, each one of us didn't choose our birth, right? We know that story. We didn't choose our parents. We didn't, you know, send a little letter to somebody saying, you know, I'd like to be born in South Africa in 1953 and, you know, whatever, and please send me wonderful parents who love me and whatever. The accident of birth just threw us into this current of life. None of us chose our gender. None of us, you know, chose our height. None of us chose our competencies. We have these wonderful potentials, and in this life, we can live out some of those competencies, and some of them we don't get to live out because life's tight and short and we have to go to kindergarten, which is a terrible idea. So, I mean, it's really much better not being at kinder, you know, because then you can live in the sandpit, and I mean, that's really the best place to be. You can do everything under the South African sun. But life is full of choices, some of them not ours to make, some of them occurred, and some of them we made. And as we sit here now, stand here now, I'm sure many of us, I know for myself, there are some things that I wish I had been able to do. For example, the story I always tell, which might be, I wanted to be a dancer. I thought that, you know, if you can't play in the sandpit or on the swing, dance. Don't you think that was a fairly good alternative? But my parent, my mother in particular, and you can appreciate why she would feel this way, is she said, Annabelle, nothing is going to happen to you like it happened to me. You're not going to be caught as I was caught, without a profession, without something to fall back on. See, the mother trying to create the impossible. So, instead of a dancer, hold on to your hats now, I became an accountant. Yes. And therein, I tell you, lie many stories. So, there is a part of me that longs to dance. There is a part of me that longs to spend time with music. There's a part of me that longs to do some of these more right-brain, poetic, you know, philosophical things that didn't come my way as, you know, an accountant and then an MBA and an investment banking. Can you think of anything more horrendous than that? So here we are, and I'm sure, I am pretty sure that some of you have some of your own longings. If only I had spent more time in the garden. If only I had traveled a little bit more. You know, those kind of if only questions. And it's not over. I think it's really important that we think about what are those unlived parts of our lives that we can still claim. Now, here is where we get stuck, as always. Many of us have downsized. New house, smaller house. We've spent hours taking things to the dump, the garbage place, right? We have moved to another area where we don't have to mow the big lawn. We have bought new furniture. We've done all of those things. But you see, those are the outside things. What about the inside things? What about the downsizing inside? You know, what of these crazy tasks running around that we do, what could we put out of work? What could we lay off? What could we fire? Which parts of those selves could we lay off and say, you're downsized? Which parts could we upsize? We buy new furniture, but do we rearrange the furniture of our minds? Do we look at the way we clothe our ideas? No. We're inclined to, you know, focus very much on the outside. And I think here's the chance. Here's the chance when we have the maturity, some wisdom, where we've slowed down. We're understanding ourselves better. We realize that the ego that we were so busy building up is soon to dissolve and go back to where it came from. So now is the time where we could look at that unlived life and we could claim some of it. And maybe we could find ways to do it. I'm not going to be able to dance like I did as a 8-year-old or even an 18-year-old or even a 38-year-old. I got 2 bionic hips. I go, oh gosh, we'd be clackety-clue if I were dancing. But I have to find another way to dance. And so, how might you do your dance, the dance that you never did? And how might you set aside time to do that and find the things you love? And that brings me to my last reflection. And that is about love. And I think as we get older, I think we appreciate love a little differently to when we were 13, 14, 15, and 16, and we met someone and we said, that's the love of my life. So I'd like to share with you something on love that I find quite meaningful. And I wonder if some of you have read Khalil Gibran, the prophet. Do you know the prophet? You know the story of the prophet? So there's Al-Mustafa, who's a prophet, and he's on this island called Orphalese. And he's been living there for 12 years and a bit. And he wanders among the people, and they don't pay too much attention to him. They're busy doing their work in the fields and trading and so on and so forth. And we know the story about a prophet that's not recognized in his or her own land, right? Anyway, Al-Mustafa is standing on the top of this hill, and he's looking out at the horizon. And he sees in the distance the ship that is coming to take him home. And he has very mixed feelings. There is a part of him that is so relieved and so pleased, and he feels so fulfilled. Now, at last, he is going to be carried home. But there's another part of him. He's lived amongst these people, and even though they haven't spent much time with him, he's sort of got to know them. Anyway, he sees the ship, and he goes to walk down towards the dock. And Elmira, she's the seeress. She sees. So she lives in the temple. And she has tried to sort of have some relationship with Al-Mustafa. And she follows him as he walks to the dock. And interestingly, people leave their fields, leave their stores, leave everything, and begin to follow Al-Mustafa and Elmira to the dock to wait for the ship to arrive. And Elmira says to Al-Mustafa, "Before you leave us, could you please give us some of your wisdom? Give us some pearls to hold on to." And it's often true, you know, where there are people among us that we didn't pay much attention to, and all of a sudden they're leaving, and we suddenly say, gosh, I wish I'd spent more time with that person. Anyway, Elmira says to him, "Al-Mustafa, could you speak to us about love?" And he answers, and he says, "When love beckons you, follow her, though her ways may be hard and steep. And when her wings enfold you, yield to her, though the sword hidden among her pinions may wound you. And when she speaks to you, believe in her, though her voice may shatter your dreams, as the north wind lays waste the garden. For even as love crowns you, so shall she crucify you. Even as she is for your pruning, so is she for your growth. Even as she ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall she sink to the roots in their clinging to the earth. Like sheaves of corn, she gathers you to herself. She threshes you to make you naked. She sifts you to free you from your husks. She grinds you to whiteness. She kneads you until you are pliant. And then she assigns you to her sacred fire so that you might become sacred bread for God's sacred feast. All of these things shall love do unto you, so that you may know the secrets of your heart, and in that knowledge become a fragment of life's heart. But if in your fear you seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, then it is better for you to cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor into the seasonless world, where you will laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. Love gives naught but itself, and love takes naught but from itself. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed, for love is sufficient unto love. And when you love, say not, God is in my heart, but rather, I am in the heart of God. And think not, you direct love's course. For love, if it finds you worthy, will direct your course. Love has only one desire, and that is to fulfill itself. But if you love, and must needs have desires, let these be your desires: to melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night, to know the pain of too much tenderness, to waken at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving, to rest at the noon hour and meditate love's ecstasy, to return home at eventide with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved in your heart and a song of praise on your lips. Isn't that a wonderful meditation? And that is what we are called to. Love. Love that is all-embracing life, that calls us to our tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, that invites us to new beginnings, and also that brings us down into the roots of our assumptions and our prejudices and our biases, and shakes them in their clinging to the earth. Love builds us and makes us naked. Love does all these things to us. And we are within love. Love is the greatest alchemy of the soul. And to truly love means to truly commit ourselves to life. And to say, I'm in it. I'm in all of it. And I will be like that brook that sings its melody to the night. And I will take, come what may, and I will be present, and I will engage, and I will fear not, because where there is love, there is no fear. So this final reflection that I invite you to on love is, Can we now, when maybe we've shed some of our ego, some of those possessions that went in the garbage truck, the smaller house that we live, can we, the stories that we've told ourselves over and over and over again about what happened and didn't happen, can we open ourselves up now to life? Life in its fullness. And live it with all the love that we can. And by being present to others, share with them that love. Exude that love that only comes through that presence. So my 5 reflection points, my invitation to all of us, including myself, of course, is how to find that meaning, not outside, but somewhere buried in my deep longing. Because therein lies some incredible answer. How might I look at the story of my life and see my own hero's journey, and see my own courage, and see where do I find purpose and meaning, and where do I lose it? How might I live more mindfully, more attuned, more present to the exquisite sensitivity of the dynamism of the world and the divine, the God, the all, the one, whatever you want to call it, that is present everywhere. How might I take this opportunity now to live parts of my unlived life? And lastly, but all-encompassingly, how might I make this from now on a journey with El Mustafa into the power of love? If not now, when? Thank you.